You mentioned Mason Mount there. Does that feel like a lost cause from a Chelsea perspective? Does it feel like he has played his last game at Chelsea?
A lost cause? I don't know. It's not my answer to make. It's probably between Mason and the club. Yeah, I mean it's a similar situation to approaching Manchester City, albeit they won the league the night before, but they're a high level team who are in a really positive way. Manchester United will have that, so it's the same point from how I approached going into City and how the players approach it. More importantly, in terms of if people think we haven't got much on the game, then the players have to show them that there is, in terms of their personal and collective approach to it in the game, because we'll obviously have to go there with a very good mentality, because they're a good team that are fighting for something that we've fought for many years, and now we're not in that position. So players need to show.
Go again in sort of September for those internationals?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know the exact details of the conversations between Raheem and Gareth, and where that's at at all. So all I do know is that Raheem is obviously a top level player who's played for England for a lot of time. So just from my sort of personal memories of playing in England for many years, I know that sometimes these games at the end of the season are different challenges compared to individuals that played a lot of games, a lot of minutes, and so if there's a mutual conversation between the two of them, then I'm sure they'll find the right outcome, best for England, best for Raheem.
On why this season has been so disappointing?
I think there's probably a lot to go over to get to the bottom of it, because for a club like us that generally has been challenging the top end of the league and for cups year after year for many years. I mean, there's probably been a couple of years where we've come off it at different times. But when you are used to that, then I think you have to explore every reason and make sure you don't let those reasons happen again. And some of that, in terms of football and squad, is a personal and collective responsibility in terms of what happens on the pitch. But we have to look at every issue, or the club does, to try and be sure that doesn't happen going forward.
I think the feeling helps.
Well, I don't know that, because the Premier League moves on very fast. Everyone's moving on and trying to do the same things, and you see the emergence of the Newcastles and Brightons and Aston Villas and these teams that are getting themselves in that equation now for top four, at least this season. And my experience of football is that if you switch it off, it's not easy to switch it on. So that doesn't always become an overnight remedy. So that's obviously not going to be my responsibility. But as I say, from my experience of being in a consistent performing club and squad for many years, the moment you do switch it off, become very hard to switch it on. So I think it's that will be the test next year.
Players don't always know. Be told that and maybe have their goodbyes at the weekend.
Well, not that I'm aware of, and I think I would be aware of that. So that would be a conversation with club and player. I had the conversation when I was here, but it was after the last game of the season at home, so it was a different situation. But as far as we stand here now, players are contracted to the club, and who knows what the future lies individually, collectively for everyone. But at this moment, I'm not aware of that.
Finally, on for you, I mean, is that...
No, I think the stat that you rolled off says it, doesn't it? I think, is that a record? I presume it's a record. So I think there are understandable factors to it in terms of the brand of the Premier League and what it means to teams to stay in there. So I think it's viewed that differently now. If the first person that receives the blame, if you want to put it that way, is the coach, and if you understand that when you go into these jobs, then that's probably a good thing to understand it. But of course, there's lots of other factors in these things. I'm not talking about my own position here. I'm talking about all these managers, and you wonder how successful always it is to change in those things. So, but yeah, it's clear that it's become that kind of a job and a situation. And there are many teams that are fighting possibly with expectations that might not be exactly stable. So that bit is hard, and we're in a very reactionary world anyway. So I think in years gone by, the reaction of 1, 2, 3 defeats or whatever it might be would have been different. Now we have this sort of explosion very quickly, and I think you just have to understand that when you're doing this job.
Good luck.
To start building the club back up to the level that it was.
Yeah, well, I think so. And when you look at the good models around that have consistency in those areas and decision making and how the club moves forward, I think they're generally the more successful clubs. We talk a lot about the Brightons and the Brentfords now, and now the Newcastle, Manchester City, all in different ways. But I think there's a real alignment of thinking through the club. And I think where we are at the minute, I think that will be the work process of trying to say where are we aligned and where do we want to get to and what does it look like. There's a lot of work in that, and I think, as I say, in Paul and Lawrence, I think we have good people in there to do that. Because, as I say, I think being connected is a big deal, and it's hard in the modern world because I think everything, as I mentioned earlier, is very reactionary. So if you want to go in a certain direction and you don't get any joy for a while, then of course people will react to that. But this, could be for Chelsea a bit of a longer picture than that, to try and get us a bit more of a process. So of course Chelsea have to get that right at their end, but obviously people have to stick with that along the way.